From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, Kansas City. I'm glad you guys are back and hopefully in from the cold. This is probably the story of the century. I don't know, at least 50 years worth, right? I mean,
there you go.
The parade for the Chiefs championship went down in Kansas City, and we're going to go through a ton of that. It is something you haven't seen. I haven't seen in my lifetime. It's so
you're old.
Yeah, I know, right? It's so once in a lifetime, at least to this point. And I'm glad that you brought up the football, because not only is the Nyko football unique, but that mirror ball that Patrick Mahomes got for being MVP, I think it's pretty good looking. It's interesting to look at, but I just want to know, was there a bet that was lost? Why was Anthony Sherman running around with it all day?
Anthony Sherman's the personal protector. He always has been to the QBs. Honestly, I have always loved Anthony Sherman, and it's always been fantastic to have him here, and I hope that he's able to come back in 2020 as well. That's another conversation for another day. But one of the things that I've always enjoyed is watching the team get led out of the tunnel, and not necessarily completely onto the field, but just coming out of the tunnel to where if they're at home or away, you always have the QB who's leading them out of the tunnel, but you always have Sherman right next to the QB. And it's your biggest and most badass guy that is just sitting there. He is the personal protector of your QB. And you could tell during the parade and throughout, Sherman was sitting with Mahomes and Kelce. We knew Mahomes and Kelce were really close. I had no idea Sherman was as close as they are. And it sounds like, you see Sherman and Mahomes watching or, talking on the sidelines during the game all the time. And I didn't know that either. So it is impressive to see that kind of relationship with those two.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I was unaware of that too. They're clearly a lot closer than we thought, but the three of them are quite a trifecta. And I do want to say this is a public service announcement. If you do get to touch the Lombardi trophy, don't put your mouth on it. You don't know where that thing's been.
No, that's no joke. I mean, after Sherman and Kelce have been doing shots off of beer off the Lombardi, I did think it was interesting because you asked the other day, or maybe I asked you how much the Lombardi weighs. I did go look. It is only 7 pounds, so it is pretty light. But it does cost them $50,000 to make it every year.
Wow. That's still pretty impressive. I would not want to be carting that thing around all day, but you have to for today. And that football, the MVP trophy is so much like it. It's very similar. And I like that they're got him there on the stage showing it. I mean, it's part of the organization of that part, at least part of this celebration. And the other thing that stood out, and this was probably my favorite thing that I saw on the day, and I do wish I had been there, but circumstances come across that way. The thing that stood out to me the most that I was happiest with was to see Frank Clark and Terrell Suggs wearing Derek Thomas's jersey, throwing it back to the guy that, man, you would have loved to have seen this in the 90s with Derek. Just putting it back to the historic part of this organization, I thought was really great to see.
Absolutely. And honestly, I'm a sucker for good stories. And honestly, that almost made me tear up a little bit. Derek Thomas meant so much to the Kansas City Chiefs, and he had such a huge impact on this franchise. For him to lose his life the way he did, we don't need to get into that. But for that scenario to end up happening the way it did, I mean, that was tragic. But to see that the guys that are still there now, or that are there now, have that respect for somebody that came before them, that really lit the way for a lot of the way, a guy like Clark plays now. And I'm not trying to compare Clark and Thomas. I don't think that's fair. Completely different types of football, completely different eras of football. But Thomas really was one of those guys that could play defensive end or linebacker and was effective at both. And I think Frank Clark could be that type of guy. But just to see them be able to respect the prior generations, I think that's a huge thing for this team and honestly for the city. And I think it all goes back to Andy Reid. And I think when we come back from break, we really need to get into that a little bit more, because Andy Reid is all about deflection. And I will say this too. The Chiefs leadership, and this is nothing against Travis Kelce, but the Chiefs leadership in Tyrann Mathieu and Patrick Mahomes are all about deflection. They want to praise their teammates. They want to praise the people that helped to get them there. They don't want to praise themselves. And that is amazing to see in this day and age.
So as you went into before the break, and in the third segment, folks, we're coming up. We're going to talk to Matt Derrick and get a little bit more insight on his way home and what he takes away from that game. Like you said, the organization about, and people are going to say that, oh, this is an act, or this is them, trying to put out a portrayal that's as different from the Patriots as they possibly can. But I'm going to contend that a lot of the behavior that we see it's Midwestern values. It's being with a team that is based in the heartland. And I think the way that this team goes about picking each other up, giving each other the credit, whether deserved or not, I think that comes from the place that is Kansas City.
Well, and I absolutely agree. I don't think you could have said it any better. It is Midwestern values. And honestly, when you start looking at what it means for this franchise, and honestly, who they're getting it from the most, because honestly, it is Mahomes and it is Matthew, but it comes from Andy Reid too. I mean, Andy Reid is always deflecting. He doesn't want the limelight. He doesn't want the center stage. And one of the things that I've always loved about Reid is he loves to joke about himself. I mean, we talked about this the other day, but his comment about not spending the night with a Lombardi trophy, spending it with his trophy wife, that's classic Andy Reid. I mean, and that is exactly what you want leading your group of men going forward. And I can't say enough. I can't respect enough what Andy Reid is, and honestly, what this entire organization looks like. And honestly, we didn't talk about this a lot. We did mention it, but I have to give a shout out to Clark Hunt as well, and the entire Hunt family. They really stepped up. They sent their entire organization to the Super Bowl. That's huge.
It is. I mean, and that's the kind of generosity that you don't see from the other organizations, or at least you don't hear about it. Maybe it does happen, and we just aren't aware. But
I will say this real quick. I will say this. I don't expect that if Kansas City is going to start making this on a regular basis in the next couple of years, that they're going to continue to send everybody. But the whole point was, we haven't been in 50 years. This is an entire organization that got us here, and I think that's what needs to be celebrated.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point, because take the opportunity when you're presented with it, and I think that is paying back all the people that have been part of that organization for so long, struggling to get there. The feast of the 90s that didn't quite get finished, the desert of the late 2000s that we all know what happened there. It's been a long time coming, and it's right.
Thank you for that late 2000s. If we didn't have that late 2000s, we don't have Andy Reid.
Right.
And honestly, I don't know that you have Patrick Mahomes, because Brett Veach was the one that wanted Mahomes. So
right.
Veach probably isn't here if Reid's not here. So, it's all connected.
It absolutely is. And it is great to see an organization take that upon itself. And maybe, again, this is just the way that things are done at a different level because of where this team is based. And I know we're talking today to mostly Chiefs fans, but if you happen to be somebody who isn't a Chiefs fan or isn't from Kansas City,
you're welcome to become a Chiefs fan. But...
Right. Yeah. There's room on the wagon. You're just on the second car is all.
Yep.
The difference is,
car.
Well, it may be at this point, but the difference really is what this organization's been through and how it's dealt, and how, despite, a couple of years where sellouts that weren't a foregone conclusion, this fan base has stayed loyal over the years through the shifts and everything else. And quite frankly, a lot of tragedy. So the people that were in the building deserve that. And I commend Clark Hunt in particular, but the whole Hunt family for doing something like that and keeping the whole family at large together, not just the 53 guys on the roster and their coaches.
Yeah. And then, seeing Andy talk, seeing, Clark Hunt talk, seeing Mark Donovan talk. Mark Donovan is instrumental in the way the business part of this franchise is run. And I think he's done a great job as well. And I think he's really helped Kansas City as a brand. So I do think that there's a big value there as well. that's not talked about. And I understand why it's not talked about, because we always talk about the football side, but there is a business side that needs to be taken into account as well. But really, to send 2,000 people, to send, even your janitors, and I'm not trying to talk down about anybody, but really to send those people that you don't really think about, that nobody thinks about in the organization, or that most people don't think of when you think about a football organization, to send those people to pay for their plane tickets, to pay for their Super Bowl tickets, that's phenomenal. That's way beyond what you would expect.
It truly is. And it is, quite frankly, the antithesis of what we've seen for the last decade or so, the dynasty that will not be named. It takes something to enjoy this to that level, and you want to include everyone you can, because while we can talk about dynasty, we can talk about this being the first step in what could be a very, very long trail of games like this that are at this level. You just never know. So take it for all that it's worth today. Take the gold in hand and run with it. And I think that's great
Absolutely.
To see from the leadership.
Yeah, and then, listening to Clark Hunt talk about what this would have meant for his dad, that was awesome for me to see. And whether or not you want to, read into whatever he said, you do what you want to do. But what I will say on that is him talking about his dad, and his dad had told him, or had said, that one of the best days of his life was when he started this football franchise, and what it meant for him to be able to bring a team to Kansas City that was able to win everything. And for Clark to be able to go through what he has since his dad passed away and take over and get Kansas City to this point, it's a great job by him. And obviously I think they've really molded a team around what their values are, and what this team, or in what Clark wants those values to be. And I think Andy Reid is the perfect fit for that. So, yeah.
That bodes well for the future as well. So
absolutely, and they bring in players that want to be able to fit into that mold. There is a huge thing that needs to be talked about, and we'll get there eventually. About there are going to be some players that you maybe want to bring into Kansas City because of talent that aren't going to fit that mold. They're not going to fit this team very well. If they can't get to a point where they respect the past, they won't fit the team near as well as what is here now.
Yeah. And that's something to keep in very much focus as we move forward and we start talking about the offseason. We're going to get to that next week. We're still trying to get some of the details and enjoy this continually. So when we get back from this, we're going to go talk to Matt Derrick, get a little more information from him.
And we're back. Matt Derrick is still trying to get home, but he's available. So thanks for doing it again, Matt.
Absolutely. Hey, you can't be tired after what happened on Sunday, and the longer you go, the better you feel.
Right. Just re-energize yourself.
Exactly.
Think it into being. At least that's what I do. I don't know how you do it. I was exhausted that night too, and I didn't even get up and out of my house. So,
I had my alarm set for, I think, 10 to get up, because it was like, okay, I'll sleep in a little bit. And this is East Coast time, so 9. But I couldn't. I mean, I woke up at like 8 o'clock, just bright, wide awake, and could not sleep. So,
well, you were there pretty late too, right? I mean, tell the people, how long does that go for you guys afterwards?
And this is all Eastern time, so that means kickoff is 6:30. I ended up leaving at 3 o'clock. That was the last media shuttle out of Hard Rock going back to the hotels. So yeah, that was and basically, I mean, it's a little bit different from a regular game. So you get through the game, and then you've got basically about a half hour of celebration on the field. So nothing going on. And then it's not an open locker room process. They bring all the players to podiums. And so that's a little bit different of an environment. So the postgame it goes on much, much longer. So I don't think I ended up making it maybe until midnight back to the press box and the working area.
Good Lord.
And while we're just, talking about champagne problems of beat writers here. So when you get this many people credentialed, the press box probably holds like it's not any different than Arrowhead. So it may be on you can squeeze 75, 150 people in there, whatever it may be. Well, the NFL's credentialing like 3,000 people. So they build these tables and put them out in the seats. So you're sitting in the upper deck in just a regular stadium seat with this table that they've built in front of you. And it's built for, I'd say, a person who's about 5'10". So when you're 6'4", a little more difficult. So I still got bruises on my leg from shoving it into the table the entire game.
Oh, man. But what an experience, right?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, champagne problems for beat reporters because everybody that I talked to, I mean, this was my first Super Bowl, could be my last. So, you gotta enjoy it. And everybody does. I mean, that's just the nature of the game. You got to take advantage of it while you can.
Well, I'm guessing it's not your last, and I'm glad, despite all that you kept your head, because there's a few of your cohorts that kind of lost their freaking minds, and I'm a little PO'd about it. So I want to get to you because the thing that the overriding storyline that's bugging me is that a lot of the national heads are continuing to yammer that this was all Pat Mahomes. It was all him driving this offense for this win. And they completely neglect the fact that the Chiefs defense shut everybody out in most of the second half, but particularly the fourth quarter. And it was a full team win, in my opinion. Am I totally out in left field?
No, not at all. I completely agree. I mean, especially because there was a period of time outside that one touchdown drive, the offense was pretty bad for 3.5 quarters. And it could have the game could have gotten very well out of hand. And it came close. I mean, had the defense not come up with a couple of stops, had they not, been able to get the stops in the red zone and force some field goals, it could have been worse. But the defense was timely. I mean, they gave up too many chunk plays. That was the worry early on. They gave up some big ones, and you can't do that. But no, this was a team win. I mean, I think the defense played great. I think Spagnuolo made the adjustments he needed to as the game went on. They figured things out. Offensively, Andy Reid came in with, I think, a really solid game plan. It just wasn't working. And maybe there's a lot of reasons for that. That's probably a whole other conversation about why it didn't work early. But, Andy Reid kept that team together. So you got to give him credit for what he did managing all of that. And Patrick Mahomes didn't do it by himself. I mean, he had some guys making some plays. And the route that Tyreek Hill made to get open on that 44-yard catch on 3rd and 15, you got to give Tyreek Hill the props for that one. And Sammy Watkins had a couple of really nice grabs. I mean, you're right. I say team win all across the board.
Oh, and I'm glad you bring up Sammy because that might have been the last that we see of him in a red jersey. But we'll talk about that in a week or two. But I really want to highlight him with you because I want your impression of that last long ball that he caught. And it was because they went right at the teeth of their secondary. He beat Richard Sherman at the line, turned him around. I thought it was probably the highlight of Sammy's season, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I watching those matchups, I kept looking at the field and trying to figure out how the 49ers were stopping the Chiefs because they were just doing things that defied logic and things you just don't do to beat the Chiefs. I mean, they were challenging them at the line. They were going single high, which, for a team like the 49ers is not common. They were doing a lot of different things. And now they were able to get away with it because the pass rush was phenomenal. They were able to get there with 4 most of the night. They got there with 3 a couple of times, which, that's really worrisome. But that's what really kept, because Mahomes needs times for plays to develop. And yeah, that one was a great wrap by Watkins. That was a point in the game where Mahomes was finally starting to get his groove a little bit as far as, buying some time in the pocket, drifting a little bit. I think he needed to do that to find some time for his guys to get open. But you're right. I mean, that was just, it was a perfect wrap by Watkins. I mean, he set up Sherman perfectly. And I mean, that's why he's here. I mean, that's why he's a savvy veteran.
Yeah. I mean, that was him putting them over the top in the playoffs, like Brett Veach had hinted at. And I think that's legit. And I want to get way into Brett Veach, but that's a different day. The bigger takeaway from me is that Sammy did some things, the contributions on offense. We talked the other day about Frank Clark, but I thought the turning point was Tyrann Mathieu losing his mind on the sideline. And at the time, with a house full of people, that happens and the whole house looks at me and I'm like, there's only two ways. They either go in the tank right now or they turn it around. There's only two options. And is there something more to it? Did you, from what you saw, I mean, I don't know if you got a better vantage point of the sideline as it happened or anything like that, but was there something else or was that really where it spun?
Yeah, no, actually, at least from my perspective in the upper deck, I mean, I think that the TV angles were probably a better look than you got inside the stadium. Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right. I mean, you see that and you automatically think, okay, this is either going to go really, really well or really, really badly. But it seemed like it was exactly the wake-up call that they needed, even though, maybe some of the guys on the sideline thought he went a little too far and were trying to calm him down. That's exactly, apparently, the kick in the pants some of them needed. And, that's what, a leader's got to do. I mean, and sometimes that means maybe you do go too far and somebody has to pull you back. I mean, this is football. This isn't going to happen at the office. I mean, this is a different type of leadership. Right. So, it's a sport. So, it's different. But yeah, I mean, I didn't see anything wrong with it. Certainly none of the players saw anything wrong with it. It seemed like it was just a well-timed explosion, and whether it was purposeful or not, or was just emotions getting the best of him, it seemed like it worked.
Well, it stood out to me because I think just in the overall scope of the season and its storyline, I think Tyrann Mathieu has paid off in every way possible. They wanted him as a leader. He accepted that role. He came in. He's a vocal voice. I mean, he does more social media than I've ever seen a player do in terms of touting the team. He's clearly taken that as part of his role. But the one thing that he hadn't had to do to that point, in my opinion, was he led by example. He led as a teacher. He led as a guy that is that good, but he never had to get down somebody's throat to motivate them. And I thought that really kind of sealed the circle for me about what kind of leader he is going to be for this team.
Yeah. And, and Andy Reid's kind of, it reminds me of him in the sense that they're very different personalities, but they both have that quality about them, which is that Andy Reid's a teacher. He doesn't jump on people. He's harsh. He's strict. I mean, he demands the best of them, but he's one of those guys that when he gets on your behind, it, and it's a big deal. And Matthew's kind of that same way. I mean, he's normally the cheerleader. He's normally the guy leading by example. He's the positive guy on the sidelines and on the field. So when he gets ticked off and when he thinks that something needs to be done and he takes it into his hands, those guys listen because it's so different. I mean, they're not used to it. So at that point, when it happens, they wake up and listen. They're like, okay, wait a minute. If Tyrann's doing this, we got to wake up. There's something wrong.
Yeah. And that leads me to my last kind of takeaway. And I'm guessing I know what you're going to think of this, but in terms of looking at the future, there's a whole lot of question marks about this roster and where they're going to have to go and what they're going to have to do. But in my mind, you have pillars of Mahomes and Kelsey on offense and Clark and Mathieu on defense. And whatever else has to happen. But those four particular players, I feel like set this franchise up to, I'm not going to say dynasty, but I am going to say that there's a possibility for a multi-year run with similar results to what we saw this season.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, there's going to be a lot of factors that go into it. I mean, you got to stay hungry. That was a big deal with this team, is that it was hungry. And that helped them at a key point in the season when they needed that motivation. So that's difficult to do sometimes, but the Patriots do it. So as Frank Clark said, he doesn't want to do it the Patriots way. He wants to do it the Chiefs way. But you got to find that motivation because once you get the ring, yeah, it can back you off a little bit. But you're right, the pillars are there. The intriguing thing is going to be how they can continue to build the defense, which I think they need to do, because the likelihood is that this is peak Chiefs offense. I mean, Mahomes is going to get better. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But will he ever be surrounded by a group of playmakers like this again in his career? That's a lot less likely, because you take Sammy Watkins out of this equation, for next season, let's say, you're not going to replace him with another Sammy Watkins. I mean, it's going to be less. Yeah, McCole Hardman's going to grow. I mean, you're going to have some things change, but you look at all of the guys that they have on these skill positions, the speed, the age, the peak of their athleticism, all of that. And especially, with the fact that in the future, you're going to have less money to spend, cap space, all these things. This might be, and maybe it'll extend into next year, last year, this year, next year. Maybe this might be the 2 or 3 year window where Patrick Mahomes will never have a better group of offensive guys around him.
I could certainly see that happening. I'm really intrigued to see where the offseason goes, and I know we'll check in with you the whole time. I hope that you get home soon, and thanks for jumping in here today.
Absolutely, Ryan. Always great talking to you.
So to wrap this up, there's going to be player exit interviews and that kind of thing as they really kind of linger, which I saw a lot of people doing on that stage too, just trying to linger and enjoy the moment and try to honestly stretch it out as long as it can go.
Yeah, and it makes sense because I didn't think about this, but NFL Network was talking about it, who I was watching it through, and they said, this is really going to be the last time all these guys are going to be together. I mean, they may have some, parties, or they may have some time where they're going to be in the building together with some of their teammates, but as a group, this is the last time they're all going to be together, more than likely.
Yeah. I mean, everybody kind of...
It's just the reality of it.
Yeah. I mean, Mahomes lives in Kansas City. From what I understand, he's going to train here, go back and forth to his trainer in Dallas. Everybody else kind of comes and goes. There'll be passing camps and get-togethers and that kind of thing. But there are some guys who won't return because of contracts or whatever else. But this is for this team right now in this.
Maybe retirements too.
Yeah, I wasn't even going to go there, but you're absolutely right. But for this team this year, this is it. They're going to clean out their lockers in what might be the first for many, but definitely a unique situation to clean out your locker when you're not angry, when you're not, trying to get out of there as fast as you can with as many plastic bags as you can carry. So that part's going to be an overhaul, but I'm looking forward to the version of the team that comes back next year. There's a lot of free agents. We will start talking about that next week, folks. We're going to try to continue to enjoy this. Hope that you did too, but let us know.
And I just have to say, sorry, I would be remiss because I did not mention this earlier. Another shout out. I believe it was Dustin Colquitt was wearing a Lynn Dawson jersey today. And I saw that early on. I did not mention that. That is cool for me as well to see him respect, the past. So I thought that was impressive as well.
Yeah, there's a lot there. And one more time, want to ask you guys, if you were at the parade and you had a good time and you got something cool in some kind of visual or audio format, tweet it at us. Just tag @LockedOnChiefs on Twitter. And send us your thoughts, your moments, your interactions with anybody, and let us know what you think. So thank you for listening to us today. We'll be back with you tomorrow, and the offseason starts next week. Have a good one, and we'll talk to you then.
Ryan Tracy is the founder of Rogue Analytics and the host of RGR Football on YouTube. Follow him there. Chris Clark is a senior analyst at ChiefsDigest.com, where you can get his work. Rate and review at Apple Podcasts, and subscribe on your preferred